We've been hearing, as we've just heard from Jade, this rejection of Donald Trump's comments and his plan. So where does it leave the US's plan now?
Well, Mel, it looks to be sinking by the hour. In the first term, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, came up with the deal of the century. Jared Kushner was going to bring peace to the Middle East. That lasted, I think, 48 hours, maybe 72 hours. So in this term, Donald Trump's come out with a very radical plan that essentially, we see they're talking about, we'll rebuild Gaza. But, who's going to live there, as Donald Trump said yesterday? The world's people. There's no suggestion the Palestinians would be able to go back in. When I lived in Israel too, there were many stories in the Israeli media and other places where Palestinians had left Israel to go overseas to study and on holiday, and then tried to come into the West Bank through the Allenby crossing in Jordan and couldn't get back in. So Palestinians will not believe any suggestion that they are simply going to be relocated while America rebuilds Gaza, and then that they can come back to these beautiful sort of condominiums. Now, Jared Kushner again, a year or two ago, was talking about real estate opportunities in Gaza. The far right in Israel has been talking about, sometimes laughing and mocking, but sometimes seriously, about we should go back into Gaza. Gaza, of course, used to have Israeli settlements, some Jewish settlements, and they were pulled out when Israel formally left Gaza and then concentrated their settlements on the West Bank.
Donald Trump said yesterday that everyone he's spoken to thinks this is a good idea. Is there an idea of who exactly Donald Trump has spoken to? Because it doesn't appear to be Egypt and Jordan.
That's right. He clearly didn't speak to the leaders of Jordan, Egypt, Palestinian Authority, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates. So who did he talk to? Did he talk to Jared Kushner in the corridor of the West Wing? Did he talk to his national security advisor? He clearly didn't talk to anybody, because the reaction from the Arab world, not just the Arab world, but across the world. Sir Keir Starmer last night in Question Time in London, very strong on this. Real contrast to the Australian Prime Minister, who has still not condemned. This is the most radical plan that we've seen, I think, from any president in our living memory. Basically, it completely overthrows Australia's policy, the two-state solution. Yet for some strange reason, the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, won't even address Donald Trump's proposal. So my question to Mr Albanese would be, why won't you do what the leaders of Britain and so many other countries, not just the Arab countries, are doing, and condemn this? Because this whole plan relies on Palestinians being moved out of Gaza and then America seizing it by military power if need be, essentially stealing the land. They're not going in, they're not invited, they're not being given it. They're going in by force, according to this plan. Donald Trump said, if need be, would use soldiers. So I can't understand why Australia won't actually say what, defence of our policy, which is completely affronted by the Donald Trump plan.
Is there an element, do you think, of people not taking this plan seriously?
Well, when the leaders of the United States and Israel stand there, the most powerful military in the history of humankind, the United States, and the most powerful military in the Middle East, when their leaders stand in the White House and essentially Donald Trump announces his vision, what he wants, I think we have to take it seriously. I mean, Donald Trump has almost everything he promised to do during the campaign, he's gone ahead and done. This is not someone who usually just says things and moves on. This is clearly his dream and his vision for the area. I think we need to take it seriously, and I think it would be the end of a two-state solution and a very dark chapter. The notion, does he want the Palestinians to be rounded up in trucks and moved? He hasn't answered that question yet. He hasn't even been asked it. So how is he going to move 2.3 million Palestinians? Because this whole plan of building the Riviera of the Middle East, It's a wonderful plan. Real estate developers will love it. American business will love it. It has one problem: the Palestinian people who live there, whose home it is.
What are some of the other possible motivations, do you think, behind the US's interest in moving into Gaza?
One thing that hasn't got much exposure at all, there are massive oil and gas deposits off Gaza. And in fact, in 2023, Israel unilaterally announced a new development. It's called the Gaza Marine. There's so much oil and gas there that for both the United States and Israel, this would be an instant boost to their energy supplies. And I've got no doubt that for the Americans and the Israelis, if the Americans can move in and unilaterally take over Gaza, they will then essentially claim ownership, I think. Well, it's off Gaza's shore. It's considered under the Palestinian territories. Take all of this oil and gas. So I think that one thing driving, certainly Donald Trump, he won't say it, I don't think, publicly, but I think it's not just a land grab of this real estate on the Mediterranean, and it is beautiful real estate when it's not being bombed. It's a wonderful place to live when it's not being bombed, but is the oil and gas supplies.
And John, we're of course in the midst of what is a very fragile ceasefire in Gaza at the moment. Where does this announcement, do you think, put that?
Well, Mel, in a strange way, I think that the ceasefire deal, I think they're at different levels. I think the plan Donald Trump announced, or the suggestion, is up here. It's geopolitics. Whereas I think the plan, the ceasefire, the hostage plan, is about, both sides want their hostages out for the Israelis and the prisoners out for the Palestinians. I actually think that will kick along to perhaps the end of its process. So I don't think that will be derailed by this.
John Lyons, appreciate your insights as always. Thank you.
Thanks.